Hello everyone, welcome to week 4. This is the second video part of module 2, and today we're going to be looking at the beginnings and the middles of groups. We spoke a bit last week about a lot of the work and the planning that goes into a group or even before starting a meeting, the groundwork and the background that needs to be done for that to be done well. And we also talked about the thinking in designing even flyers, how to get information out to people and how to communicate to people what the group was about and who it was for. This week we're going to look more at the first and the middle sessions of a group, and we're going to start by focusing on the very first group session. There's different stages or life stages that are acknowledged in group work. The planning and the designing, the pre-first meeting, setting up what is the purpose, the aims, the structure of the group, and the beginning. In some instances this includes the assessment of the participants. So for example, in a treatment group there may be individual assessments that are conducted by a worker with the potential participants of the group. There may be actually set questions that are asked. There may also be communication with a counsellor that may have referred that person to the group. It can be formal or it can be quite an informal process. The storming of the group is when people are getting to know the group and each other, checking out what the aims and what the purposes are. The middle part of the group is really when the hard work, we're doing the work, the established patterns of interaction between people in the group, and often when challenges actually emerge. And then there's the ending, when a group comes to a closure. The work is done, the plans have been done, evaluating, referring, and ending the group. That's another stage again. I'm looking at slide 5 and on the PowerPoint on LearnLine for this unit, and the beginning of the group, the importance of being clear by the worker, by the group leader or facilitator cannot be, reinforced strongly enough. That being clear right at the outset about the roles and the responsibility within the group, what the group is about, and particularly about the role of the group leader, what role, what tasks is the group leader responsible for. This allows the people who are going to potentially be part of that group to really make an informed decision whether or not they want to join that group or not. So they're getting information that's informing their opinion about whether they want to be part of it. And it also clarifies the expectation for group members so that they come with as realistic as possible expectations. On slide 6 you'll see a couple of introductions to different types of groups. The first one is an informal introduction. We're meeting with a group of parents to talk about plans to build a new community garden, and we want you to be part of it. Introducing the idea of the group, the purpose of the group, and inviting people to participate can be as informal as that. And one of the things as workers that we need to practice is being very clear what it is we're speaking to people about, what the purpose of the group is. And sometimes, particularly in setting up a community group or an action group or a planning meeting, it may be the informal conversations that we have with people that are telling them and explaining to them what the group is about. The second example on slide 6 is different again, and this is more around a treatment group. We're setting up a group for young people who are experiencing depression. Your worker said that you might like to be part of it. Notice how it's put as an invitation, but it's still putting it out there to the person, very clear that the group is for young people who are experiencing depression, and also very clear immediately that this worker is speaking to this young person because another worker has told them. So immediately the picture is created for the person who's being invited or reading or hearing about it. Immediately they're getting a picture about what it is. What are they considering going to? The workers have got a responsibility to be very clear about the aims and the purpose of the group, and that's communicated clearly to people. The group members also have the opportunity to input into those aims, to have conversation about them, and also there is an evaluation process throughout the group that should be also explained and discussed right at the outset. The initial introducing of group members to each other is really important, and it's not uncommon for people to turn up to a meeting or sit down to be part of a group and it just starts and people have not even been invited to speak, to even introduce themselves or to even say their name. It's so important that people are introduced, that people have the opportunity to speak, that people have the opportunity to hear their voice in the group, in the room, and that people in doing so also get to assess and to get a feel for that group about how they will participate. One of the things that we often underestimate in a group or a meeting is the things that are happening for people, the things that are going on for people outside of that room or outside of that meeting can be quite significant. And whether there was an argument before someone actually came to attend a group, whether someone witnessed an accident on the way to a meeting, whether they're running late, whether they're worried about what the group means, what they're going to have to say. There's lots of things that are going on for people when they arrive to be participating in a group, particularly for people who might be part of a group for the first time. Someone suggested in the lecture in the Casuarina campus class today that some people would be terrified, and I think that is very accurate. That a lot of people will be terrified the first time they come to a group. So giving people the opportunity to hear their voice, to speak, to be heard, and to listen to others in the group is really important. And icebreakers are one way that we can do that in a group setting. It can be really simple introduction exercises that allow people to speak, to say something about themselves. I've also uploaded a one-page sheet with a couple of icebreakers and some reflections on those as well to emphasise the role of the facilitator and the group leader. Of course, the type of group that you are responsible for leading, or whether it's a meeting you're running, that will really influence the type of icebreaker that is going to be appropriate for that group. So the workers often also might need to challenge sometimes the roles and assumptions that people make about each other. People come with ideas about what they think the group's about, or what they think other people might have expertise about. People might have ideas about the role of the facilitator. Perhaps the facilitator may be seen as being an expert who's going to answer questions and solve their problems. People will come with a lot of different expectations, so the worker needs to facilitate and model really good and clear communication, and that's also about being clear about their role. The worker's role is to create safety, particularly in treatment groups, but also in task groups. If you're responsible for facilitating a community action group that's meeting to address a safety issue in the town or the community, it's really important that the worker is clear that they're there to enable people to speak and to participate and feel safe to do so. The slide 10 is an image of a tree. This is really there to highlight that for the life of the group, or even through the course of meetings where people get together for task meetings, there's going to be growth and there's going to be change. And there's going to be many things that contribute to the health of any group. Things that are going to set right from the outset the foundation, the tone and the expectations of that group. A lot of that is set up right at the beginning in the way that the group is introduced, the way that people are invited to contribute, and the tone that is set by the work and the actions of the facilitator. And there are many things happening for individuals, as I said earlier, prior to coming to any group, to any meeting, and acknowledging what those are and acknowledging that people do bring different expectations, and talking about those can be a good way of clearing the air. I'm just looking now at slide 11, and again I'm just going to refer to the sheet that's been uploaded on LearnLine as well, which has just a couple of very simple icebreaker activities that are just tools, ways of getting people to talk, and they really, it's good to have a few of them up your sleeve. And one of the things that I observe with different groups that I've been involved in is that if I have a few icebreaker activities or a few activities, sometimes on the day or walking into a room, getting the feeling of who is there and the atmosphere of the group, one activity may be more appropriate than the other. So having a few of these up your sleeve is really useful. But the group facilitator or leader has a key role in making sure that the icebreaker is an activity that people understand, that it's safe for people to do, and also is part of setting the tone, the way that you're wanting to conduct that meeting or the way that you're wanting that group to function will be influenced by the icebreaker activities that you use. Early on, we, in running groups, would always spend time talking about a group contract or an agreement. And we've touched on this previously in last week's seminar, but we're just revisiting some of these. They may be written down, but they may also be spoken about, and time would be spent, particularly in a treatment group, talking about what the purpose of the group is, what people's goals and expectations are, how the worker is going to lead or facilitate that group, what sorts of activities people can expect to be part of, how long the meeting's going to go for, where it's going to be held, confidentiality, inviting people to be committed, group processes, when the group's going to finish, how the group's going to be evaluated, and if there will be follow-up at the end of the group once the group finishes. That covers a lot of different areas in terms of running a group. Not all of them will apply to every group, and particularly not all of them will apply to running a meeting. However, being very clear with people at the outset of the meeting about the purpose of the meeting, about how the meeting is going to be conducted, about how long it's going to go for, about follow-up. These are really important things to be clear about. Assessment of the members of the group. This can happen in a really informal way, or it can happen formally, depending on the type of group that we're talking about. For example, if you were asked by your employer to run a group for people who were experiencing mental health issues and who had spent time in a psychiatric ward, and their psychiatrist referred them to your group and said that they must come. Those people are mandated to attend that group. They then are likely to be part of an assessment process that might actually have some questions, might have some information about their treatment that would be used prior to them coming into that group. And the worker would be able to have that information to meet with people before starting the group. It also can help the group leader or the facilitator to have background or to know what expectations people are bringing or what their background is. In a treatment group, that can be quite a formal process. In a task group, such as the example I was giving earlier about an action group, a community action group that is getting together, it can be quite informal, and people may meet the facilitator or the group leader and have conversations with them, and they might be basing their assessment on who's going to be the best people to be part of this group, on having conversations with people. In terms of conducting the group, in the beginning stages of the group, there'll be some way of recording minutes or records, and if anything of that nature is to be conducted, the group leader would be very clear with the members if they were to take any notes. And some group members might also feel reluctant to share information, and some people early on might also be feeling quite anxious and might be feeling quite nervous, and they might be still deciding whether they are actually going to stay and be part of that group. In fact, it's been suggested by some theorists that the first session often isn't actually the first session at all, particularly in a treatment group setting, that people might be coming with a lot of anxieties and a lot of questions, wondering, does that group leader know what they're talking about? Can they answer my question? Can I trust them? Will I even like the other people in the group? I don't know if I want to talk to those people. A lot of things may be going on for people. And some people might not come back after the first session. And often it can be suggested that a lot of what is said mightn't easily be heard by people in the first session, particularly in a treatment group, because their level of worry or anxiety or nervousness might be so high. And there might be new people that join the group at the second session. So a lot of revisiting of the initial group rules, agreements and introductions has to be repeated in the second session. Those stages of groups that you perhaps have heard the terms, the forming, storming and norming, are terms that are often used in reference to the life cycle of a group, and there's a lot of tentativeness and people wondering, thinking about whether they'll stay in there or be part of it at the initial stage, when the facilitator's role is to be as engaging as possible and to be modelling the values that they want that group to be running on. But we're focusing a little more on the middle stages right now, and the middle stages will be different whether it's a task or a treatment group. For example, with the task group, we'll go back to our community action group that is looking at planning some events, perhaps to address the concerns around the safety of young people in their community. The middle stages is usually when the hard work is happening. This is when people get past talking about good ideas but actually have to push things into practice. So the excitement about being part of a new group, or the worries or the concerns about being part of a new group, perhaps has worn off a bit, and now there's a lot of other hard work to be done. This can be a really challenging time, whether it's in a task group or a treatment group, that people can lose enthusiasm, people can feel tired and discouraged, attendance might drop off, fewer people might want to be part of the group. The worker has a really big task there to keep the momentum happening in the group. And notice if there are cliques forming, or subgroups, or people are being excluded, or not everybody is perhaps participating with making decisions. And particularly around motivating people to stay, this can be a really key role for the worker at the middle stage. Referring back to some of the groundwork that's done right at the outset is really important at the middle stage. Reminding people what the purpose of the group is, revisiting those aims and goals that were established at the outset, and being really tuned into the relationship between the members, and perhaps reviewing the contract, the group agreement. Is this what we still want to be doing? Is this what we set out to do? And noticing what has been achieved and celebrating those, and encouraging a reflection and evaluation on what's occurred so far. Slide 17, if you can see this image, is a boat. It's lost its way and it's caught on a ramp, and far off in the distance we can see a town, perhaps its destination. The middle stages of a group can often feel like the group has lost direction. It can sometimes feel like goals haven't been reached, and the power relationships in the group might have taken over, and some people can feel like giving up. And the role of the facilitator or the group leader at this stage is really critical in navigating the group through this uncharted waters, and to know that it's not uncommon for this to happen, and to acknowledge that can be a really important part of being able to continue operating as an effective group. I'm looking at slide 18 now, and just looking at some of the importance of checking back with some of the things that were emphasised at the outset that need to be kept in mind in the middle stages. Noticing who's taking on leadership roles. Are people still contributing equally? Are there other ways to move or to shift the dynamics? Actually, to shake up perhaps the way that the group is operating. One example, or one way of doing this, can be to actually suggest something quite different, and a group may have been meeting in a particular venue for a number of weeks. Just to suggest that perhaps we should all go out, the group should go out together next week and have a meal together, to do something else, to do something informal, and meet together and have a meal together. Of course, depending on the type of group it is, just shifting where the group happens, where the group meets, can sometimes assist to move things through this stage. The group leader or facilitator is always responsible for checking that people feel safe and that the interaction is respectful and inclusive. This is the role of the facilitator, to continue reminding people about that. There might also be some actual real barriers that a group may come up against, that there perhaps isn't the money to carry out the project, the plan that we intended to do. Perhaps people haven't got the time. There might be some real barriers for the group, preventing or putting obstacles in front of their goals, and noticing what's happening around the group cohesion. Is it increasing or is it decreasing, and why might that be happening? There are many different ways of addressing the changes in the middle stages of a group, but being able to speak with the group members about these can often be the way forward in addressing these. Asking feedback from the group members can be often a very powerful way of involving people in the group in addressing what's actually happening. That can be done individually, or it can be done as a group discussion. Sometimes maybe partway through a group doing a survey and asking some key questions to group members about their experience in the group and their experience in achieving their goals. Sometimes an outside person can be used to review a group. There's advantages and disadvantages of doing that, and there can be times when that can be really useful. There are other ways that the group facilitator or leader can build into the group regular opportunities for people to review, to give feedback, and to talk about how the group is going, how they're progressing towards their goals, and other ways that things may be done differently. Next week we're going to be looking more closely at treatment groups. Bye.